Spring, you'll keep trying, right? Okay. So welcome to our Board of Equalization's meeting this morning. We've got two commissioners so far, Commissioner Graves and Commissioner Lee, myself here. And on our agenda, we have 5 items on our agenda to walk through. The first one on our agenda is to approve the Board of Equalization Assessors Approved Review Process Report. Any questions to that?
No.
Motion to be in order.
Move that we approve the assessor approved report as stated in number 1.
And I'll suspend the rules so that I can second, and I'll second that motion. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That passes 2-0. The second on our agenda is to approve the Board of Equalization Assessors Initial Appeal Report. Any question there?
No.
Okay, a motion to be in order.
Move that we approve the assessor initiated appeals as stated in number 2.
And I'll second that motion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Oop, that passes 2-0. The third, fourth, and fifth are, either to approve or deny. The third one is to approve or deny a petition to the Board of Equalization to hear appeal of the property valuation. And as I read down through this, and it looked like there was some extenuating circumstances in there with surgeries and so forth. Bert,
Yeah,
would you like
looks
to
that way.
walk through that?
He provided some information that, based on the circumstances, the auditor's office would recommend approval of this late petition.
Okay.
Yep. A motion to be in order.
Move that we approve the petition as stated in number 3.
And I'll second that motion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. That passes 2-0. Number 4 is to deny or approve a petition to the Board of Equalization to hear an appeal of property values. Again, as I read down through that one seemed to be questionable, or there wasn't any extenuating circumstances that were outlined.
Yeah, the petitioner did not actually detail any reason as to why they filed their appeal after the filing deadline. Don't have anything to go off of, have to recommend denial on that, unless the board feels otherwise.
Without documentation, I don't.
Yeah, it's hard to.
Yeah. I'll move then that we deny the petition as stated in number 4.
I'll second that. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, that passes 2-0. Number 5 is pretty similar, to deny or approve the petition of the Board of Equalization to hear an appeal of the valuation of property. Word on that one.
Oh, just on this one, the petitioner statement was they received the notice on 8/14, and they filed within 45 days of the receipt of the letter. The county records show that we mailed out this notice within the regular time frame, so it went out with all the rest of the notices. So regardless of when the petitioner received it, the counties follow through on our part, which is what is required by statute. And if they did receive the letter on 8/14, that gave them a full 30 days to file an appeal on time. I'm not sure what their 45 days they're talking about there, but the law requires that we send out the notice by July.
So assuming they're 8/14, they were
Right.
after the 30 days from that, but before 45 days from that?
No, so I don't know where the 45 days that the petitioner is bringing forward is coming from. Under Utah state law, we're required to give citizens, I'm looking for the
Sure.
right term there. Anyways, either by September 15th or 60 days after whenever we send out the notice. Now, the September 15th, or in this case this year was September 17th because of the weekend, that is 60 days after of July 20th, which is the statutory date to send out the valuation notices. So that's how that calendar works out. We always make our deadline, at least have
So
as far as I know.
when did they turn in their application after the date they received?
They turned it in. They turned in their application on 10/2.
Which is within
petition
20 days of when they claim they received it.
Right. Well, no, they turned it on October 2nd, and they said they received the valuation notice on 8/14.
Okay, so within the 60 days, based on that, if
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, but basically they have not fulfilled the requirement of the statute because we send out the notice on time, regardless of when they get it and open it. The clock starts from when the county sends out the notice and based on
And
our
so
records.
let me tell you a story about this county. We went to vote by mail this year. I
Yes.
happen to know the election official very well. I know I was on the claimed first batch, ran by the county. I know he checked. I never received it. I was on the next batch. I never received it. I did eventually receive the third batch, and they kept following up. So just because we show that it was mailed, how do we prove that? Again, but for knowing these two men personally and calling them and tracking it, so that's my problem. If
Right.
that's how they claim, if all we're saying is, well, we ran this batch report, what if we use the same people that mailed my ballot?
We didn't. We used Freedom Mailing.
We use the
They-
same people to deliver it.
Well, that I can't help you with.
So that's my point,
Right.
is that the only reason to deny it? But for, let's say, the date, would they have a proper
No.
appeal?
No, they would not.
Okay.
Because they, again, if the petitioner
proper right
received.
to appeal, I should say.
If the petitioner received the valuation notice on 8/14, based on
No,
that,
no,
they would still
I'm
have.
saying they got it on the date that you claim.
Right.
Their application, had it been within that statutory deadline, would they have that right to appeal? Is there any other reason that we should deny the appeal other than the date?
Yeah, they didn't, I don't know, I'm sorry, I'm confused. They did not, they received, they said they received the notice on 8/14, which gave
Right.
them a full 30 days until, before the filing deadline to perfect an appeal. We did our job, they opened the notice then, they still had a full 30 days, which is a full month to get an appeal filed on time. I don't see why there's an issue.
Okay, so the
Yeah.
date's the only reason. Okay.
So what you're saying is that they had 30 days to act, they had the notice, even if it did come late in the mail, they still had a period of time to act in which they didn't act.
Yes.
Okay.
It would be our opinion that they had plenty of time to file an appeal. They wouldn't have needed to file it late.
Okay. Well, on that grounds, then I'm ready for a motion.
Okay, motion,
I'm ready to make one, I mean. I will move then that we deny the petition as stated in number 5.
and I'll second that. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. That passes 2-0.
Motion to adjourn.
I'll second that. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
We're now adjourned. Yes.
Hey, Rob. will
Try to get
you twist that
Commissioner
third
Ivy
one?
on the phone, and then we'll start the recording process.
Been a while since we've had sunlight, yeah. Thank you.
We're going to start our commission meeting. I got the thumbs up, so we're now recording. Thank you sorry about the process of trying to get you on the phone earlier. It didn't quite work out.
Yeah, it's okay. I understand.
All right, so we'll start our Board of County Commissioners meeting this morning, and as always, we start with a prayer, reading, or thought, and looking for someone to help us with the Pledge of Allegiance. Is there any volunteers from the audience that would be willing to participate with us in that prayer, reading, thought, or leading us in the pledge? Andrew? Would you like to do the prayer, reading, or thought? Would anybody like to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance? Okay, thank you.
Dear Heavenly Father, we're thankful for this day. We're thankful for our many blessings. We're thankful for the life that we have and the opportunities which are ours. We're thankful for those men and women who put their own safety at risk to protect us and give us the liberties and freedoms we have. And also thankful for all those who fought the fires that we've had this season. Pray that I'll bless them and their families. We pray that we'll be able to make good decisions and discuss things in a reasonable manner today in this meeting, and that we'll remember the importance of liberty. And we say this in the Son Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
You all join me in saying the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you for participating with us in that. Just to mention, when it comes to comments, if there is an agenda item in which you'd like to comment on, if you'd come up, to the podium here during that period of time in which the item is we're discussing, or if we put it on consent agenda and it goes through and you'd still like to talk about it, just come up after we've built our agenda for consent. And then public comment other than what's on the agenda will be at the end of our meeting. So with that, we'll go to building our agenda. And on our consent agenda, listed consent agenda, we have 17 items. Are there any on there that we need to pull off?
Not for me.
I did not have any.
Okay, we'll leave them all on consent then. Starting with our regular agenda, we'll put everything on consent from the regular agenda unless we pull it off for discussion. Looks like number one, Richard's here now. So number one, if we could have that report, if we pull that one off. And we could pull off number 6. Number 7, Anthony, this one here just seems to be formatting changes. I don't see any changes substantially to this. Is that correct? And I'm
You
not
can just
number
yell
7.
from back there.
Okay. So, let's have discussion on that then. And then, number 10, if we could have a brief conversation on that. And number 13, some conversation on that too.
And then we're leaving the others on consent as
And everything
approved.
else will be on consent as it says approved or whatever wording they have on there. Received,
I'm good with that list.
okay.
Okay, so 1, 6, 7.
Got 1, 6, 7, 10, and 13. Okay, let's start with number 1. This one is a report that we've asked
There,
for
here, yeah.
after the run, walk, or roll. Come on up. It was an event that was held on September 8th. Wait, yeah, this event was held on September 8th. Hello, welcome.
We're excited somebody finally came back to present on how their event went.
Well, thank you, Commissioners. We appreciate you the opportunity to come and share with you our wonderful event that happened on September 8th. Cheryl Campbell is my fiscal officer. I'm Sandra Curcio, the Executive Director of Ability First Utah. We've been in operation now for going on 18 years, and this was our 16th annual Fun Run Walk and Roll. And we have to say this year was one of our largest races. We had about 196 people that registered, and we had about 160 that ran in the race. And we had a group of volunteers from T-Mobile that came and helped with the course. Volunteers are always a huge need when we put these events on, especially the day of, helping to kind of direct the racers on the course. And so we had a big group from T-Mobile and a big group from the Olive Garden. They brought in and helped us at this staging area as well as on the course. And so our volunteers are very much needed, and we're so grateful for them and what they did to help us to put the event together. And my staff as well. We did a lot of work in putting it together, but we felt it was very successful. I'm going to let Cheryl kind of share with you kind of what the proceeds and everything that we did make, the total amount that we made, and what we're kind of using some of that for. Okay.
The race registrations, we keep our race registrations quite low, and so the fees that we bring in for that basically cover the cost to run the course. And then we have race sponsors. There's a lot of work that goes before the race to have companies come in and sponsor us. And so our total proceeds were well, we're still paying a couple bills off, but around $14,000. And that money will be used throughout the course of the year to support all of our programs, our independent living. And
Our youth
you would do better.
Yeah.
That part.
It goes to support our youth program. We do a lot of services to our youth with disabilities. We work with 3 different school districts, Alpine, Nebo, and Provo school districts, a lot of their post-high students. We do a lot of soft skills, independent living soft skills. They come into the center and we teach them, how to budget, how to cook, how to do a lot of the management skills, and also the pre-employment things that we do to help them to be ready for jobs and get them ready to enter the workforce. And what does that mean, entering into the workforce? And just help these kids to be more prepared so that they can be independent as possible. And we also work a lot. And so the funding that we make from the race also supports those programs and, helps us to build that extra revenue outside of our contracts. So we're so grateful that, that you help us and support us in our annual race each year. And we're looking forward to our race again next year, which will be on September 7th.
Okay,
So,
Fantastic.
thank you.
Thank
Thank you
you.
for the report, and thank you for the good work that you're doing on that. Usually before you get to the race, you'd come before us to ask for a certain amount of a waiver, which we,
Yes.
we give for the best interest of the citizens in the county. And so thank you for coming back and reporting on the good work that you're doing.
well, thank you very much for this opportunity, and thanks for all you do.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I really like the roll part of that race. All right. Okay, now, next on our agenda is to receive the recommendation committee's recommendation for the RFP that we put out. This was for Bridalveil Falls, and Robert.
Robert Baxter, County Purchasing Manager. We had 2 eligible proposals that were submitted, and the evaluation committee met and evaluated the 2 proposals.
Who was on that committee?
That was Richard Nielsen, Glenn Tanner, and Mike Long from, he's from State Parks.
Okay.
And the recommendation that the committee made, well, they ranked the two proposals, number 1 and number 2. But the recommendation from the committee was to reject both proposals. They didn't feel that either would really be in the best interest of the county. However, if you do decide to go forward with one of the proposals, they rank the 2. Number 1 is Scenic Canyons Preservation Society. Number 2 is Curtis Minor Architecture.
Why didn't they feel they were? See, the hard part is I don't have any of the plans. All I have is a piece of paper that says number 1, number 2.
Right. I think Richard might be able to address that a little better than I could.
Richard Nelson, Public Works. What we looked at with the 2 proposals that came in there, there were some similarities and some vast differences in what was being proposed. In the one that was Scenic Canyons, they were proposing to rebuild a tram that would be very similar to what was there before, with a public space at the top and open, through the operating season. At the bottom of the tram site, having some restrooms, and I believe it also had a small concessionaire area there, if I remember correctly. Cost of doing that was around $7.5 million, and they were proposing a cost sharing with the county. The proposal didn't say what that cost sharing would be. And what that would look at, if we assumed a 50-50 split, that's, you know, $3.5 or $4 million to the county
Okay.
for that. It didn't really get into any park amenities there at the base, other than having the restrooms and a small concession stand at
And
the
I'm
bottom.
really curious then why they're number one.
Well, that's, so the second one, that was Curtis Minor, Richard Losey, that proposal, they were proposing to build. There we go, sorry. What they were proposing to do is to build a tram that would be on the site, that would be open to the public approximately 6 days a year. Throughout the season, the top of the tram would have a, Richard, correct me if I get it wrong here, but a
Building.
residential treatment facility that would be, it's not open to the public,
Right.
but there would be days that would be open for the public to go up and get to the top of the tram. That proposal, they were proposing to purchase the property at the top of the tram and an aerial easement for about $495,000. Didn't address anything else on the park side of the,
Okay, so
of the
again,
equation, so.
my question is you have ranked 1 and then 2. 1 would cost the county $3.5 million to do a tram. Number 2 would cost the county nothing but selling some of the property
Correct,
to do a tram.
correct. What we looked at
That
as.
is great financial sense that I'm not
I-
understanding.
well, what we were looking at is benefit to the public. You know, if the public's using the site, where do they get the benefit of using the site the best? And that was the one that was the one that's ranked number 1. That's the reason we went that way. It wasn't based solely on the financial obligation either way, but how does it best serve the public? So that was how we came up with our ranking. Yeah, and our recommendation is to deny both of them. We feel like we could do a park that would satisfy the public without a tram, obviously, for a considerable less amount of money than that, so.
Well, we've owned this for 4 years and we've done nothing, so this one strikes a real nerve with me, so. Yeah, to me, of course, I've been involved to the one aspect. The tram isn't necessarily a public thing because it is never efficient for a government to own an operated tram. I 100% agree. That's why I'm confused on these. The park amenities, based on the footprint that I'm aware of number 2, actually doesn't impact the use of Bridalveil Falls whatsoever in how it's currently being used today.
Correct.
Okay, but number 1 does.
But it also provides amenities for the public.
For $3.5 million, a couple
I'm-
toilets.
That's why we're recommending neither one of them, so.
Okay, well. Okay.
So now you know what our thoughts are, and we're happy to
So-
have more conversation if you'd like, so.
I guess
I have a question, Richard.
Okay?
As we're working through this, we just don't seem to be getting a lot of response. Why do you feel that we're just not getting a lot of applicants or people interested in doing something? Is it just not profitable? Is it just not a lot of people offer these kind of services? What's your take on why we're not getting a lot of feedback on concessionaires or other services?
Based on some discussions with Mike Long with State Parks, who was part of the review committee on this, I think a big part of it is there's 2 things that are there. One is that it's not a gated facility where you have to come in and pay an entry fee to get into the site. That's one component to it. The other is the fact that it's basically a 6-month operating window because of the avalanche hazards that are there, and it has to shut down through the wintertime. That was kind of his take on it, at least from what I understood, that why we were not getting a big response. We have had a couple of entities that have inquired about it as we've gone through some of these processes that have been from out of the area, but they, at least as we have talked with them, they don't seem to really understand what Bridalveil is, and they look at it more like it's I'll say like a Bryce Canyon, where you pay the entry fee, you come in, you can be there year round, do different things, and that's kind of how they had approached some of the, and it was with the RFI that we did a few months ago, we had a respondent then that was from east part of the country. I don't know exactly where, I don't remember. But that's kind of what they were looking at, but, they were looking at, souvenir shops and concessions of that nature, on the site, and it just didn't really seem to fit with what was there. So, I don't know
But
if
again,
that's,
who's making that decision? Like, see, that's the thing is, that's the first I've ever heard of some of those, but it's a 6-month use facility as one type. If you Google, we're about to enter its actual biggest time of the year as far as Google ratings, because it's like the #1 ice climbing place.
you mean when it's closed and people go in there against the signs that say closed and do not enter and enter at
Yep.
your own risk and,
But again,
so.
that doesn't mean we can't do something about it. If we're going to talk about what the public wants, if the public's bypassing signs for public property to go utilize something recreationally, maybe the government's wrong, and maybe we should do something to protect it.
We would have.
I
liability.
understand the liability issue. In fact, we've got one of those on here again, but it's not a 6-month facility. I guess my frustration is we've owned it for 4 years. We bought it to stop hotels. We might as well put hotels.
We've had a plan that we drew up about 3 years ago that we proposed to the commission, and at that point, the commission directed us to go get these RFPs, and we've been working on that. We've done.
So if we don't do this, so we don't do either one of these, what's the plan?
Well, what we would propose from Public Works is we go in and we build the amenities, the restrooms, the pavilions, upgrade the trail, some of that kind of stuff that, we can show you the plan that we drew up a few years ago, but we're open to whatever the commission would like to do.
So I've been involved with this one for quite some time, trying to find some balance in it. And it has been frustrating to kind of see what we could do, what we should do, how it should work, what would be the best way. And in my opinion, with this RFP is we got a little mixed up, but we left it open enough to allow for everyone to kind of say whatever they wanted. But now in looking back at it, I think there's a little bit of it got mixed, because we got two different issues as I see it going on here. One, when we opened up the RFP, in my mind, I was opening it up saying, because I talked with the state, I said, you guys deal with this all the time. Why don't you come down and help us with this? Let's find a way that we can enhance this park in an appropriate way that will allow for the public to go up there in greater numbers and be able to do it in a safe manner and enjoy that area, because it's a great place to be. Millions of people agree with that. Second, though, is this tram and the lodging, or a lodge or a building that's up there, whatever the case may be. And I think those two have somehow integrated, which I think we need to separate them and say they're different. If we go with a private enterprise putting up a lodge up there and doing the tram, then that should be sold off, and that's a whole separate issue, and we still have the park issue down below. Because I think you're right, to accept one where we're saying that's gonna be it, it's not. It doesn't, there's no concierge there, there's no amenities, there's no plan, there's no process in place for it. I don't know how we work through that. But to accept the other one too, the one that's recommended, well, I know what your recommendation is, but the one that kind of came on the ranking as the #1, it doesn't really fit, I think, what we think the park should be either. So we have a dilemma with two proposals in an RFP that are not matching exactly, I think, what we were anticipating or trying to do with that park up there. And that's kind of where I see it.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, again, the top of Brideville Falls, county's never going to use it. There's no way to access it but for tram or helicopter. We're not going to do
Or if you're really
either.
adventurous and want to climb it, but I'm
Right.
not really adventurous.
And that's why I say, to me, my frustration is this has been being talked about, this RFP, for 3 years.
Correct.
The thing that came out of it that has been waiting for at least 2 years. And at least 2 years for the county to just hurry, develop a plan for the park. They don't care where and how, but they wanted to do this part separately and sell it off. But we told them, let's go through this process. So whatever we do, if we reject this, which, fine, let's go back to the other one and let's work on that, on the other issue, and let's surplus some property because the county's never going to use it. And this is where I disagree. Whether, well, actually, I don't disagree with this part. So,
If I can make a comment there, if the objective of the commission is to surplus that upper site and to see some revenue from that, then Mr. Losey's proposal would be the one to go with. That would surplus that upper site and provide you some funding for amenities that we as the county could do on the lower site, if that's the direction that you want to go. So.
Right, that's why.
But that's not what this RFP was about.
No, but
no, I'm just saying
that's my underlying term.
That
That's my underlying term on why I'm offended in the order of number 1 and number 2, because your best interest and the county's best interest is not served in number 1, and it is better served in number 2, because if we're talking about revenue and potential going back to help in the park, toilets do not outweigh spending $3.5 million versus projected revenue.
But I think we're getting them mixed, and so.
I'm just going on why he said they were ranked number 1.
Well, and I would add that really the commissioners can choose from either 1 or 2. You don't have to really take into account which one's number 1 or number 2.
Well, to do what
You
I'm
can pick either
recommending,
one.
that was the recommendation in number 2, actually isn't part of this RFP. It would be a surplus of property, let's proceed, and then still do the park and the plans that I have seen and I liked. I told you I liked them 2 years ago. We just have gone through this process. The state was a little slow in getting back to Commissioner Lee at first.
Well, because we had a director passed away.
I'd like to just share a couple thoughts here. First off, I actually fully support the recommendation, which was to not receive either of these, because I think they're both problematic. For me, on the park, I think one of the messages that I'm getting, and that I'm also hearing from residents, is maybe we don't want a whole bunch of stuff there. We don't want a tram. We don't want buildings. We actually want to go into a natural, quiet setting and simply enjoy the beauty that's Bridal Veil. And that's all of it, from top to bottom of the mountain. To just have a place we can go that's not commercialized, that's just simply nature and beautiful. And so we got to put in a couple toilets, make the trail a little better, find a place for people to park so that they can actually just have that natural, pristine experience of the falls without any commercialization.
Well, historically, Bridal Veil Falls has had a tram, and there's nothing more natural and appealing than 2 pitty toilets and the aroma. But I do understand what you're saying. That is a definite point of view that I have heard.
One other thought that we had in discussion with Mike along with the state, possibility of having food trucks that could come in there on a permit type basis. That would provide some concessions there.
My friends in the health department are already probably thinking, and the attorneys are already thinking, we don't inspect those. I mean,
I'm just saying that was the thought that was discussed in our discussions. So,
Yeah.
Mr. Commissioner, just remind you, back about 4 or 5 years ago when this was purchased, the state parks did come in and did offer
3 years and 10 months to be exact.
did offer to help at that time. I sound like you've had some discussions with them. They even offered some financing at that point, at that hearing, because I was here at that time.
Yeah. That was the state park director that Commissioner Lee indicated had passed away.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
don't know exactly where that status is at this point. So.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay.
Other questions for me?
Nope.
Other comments? Yes.
The tip moves, Richard. Just the tip is all that moves. Yep.
Dear County Commissioners, my name is Richard Losey. I'm a lifelong resident of this area and have enjoyed the unparalleled beauty and majesty of Provo Canyon since my youth. I own the former Osmond Television Studio located at the base of Provo Canyon, along with multiple properties at Sundance. These locations are the home of Cirque Lodge, our Utah County licensed and internationally recognized treatment center, which has been in operation since 1999. Cirque Lodge has treated over 5,000 individuals and families and is a willing and appreciative Utah County property taxpayer.
Willing.
Is that accurate? My lovely wife and I live at the top of Popa Canyon overlooking Deer Creek Reservoir. It has been a year and a half since I first contacted the county about a well-conceived and authentic Bridal Veil Falls proposal. I know your time is valuable. I ask the commissioners to allow the few minutes I will take for me to address the three of you collectively. Commissioner Ivey, I would be appreciative if you would be respectful of this process and listen with attentiveness. I would be pleased to answer any questions concerning my proposal at the conclusion of my remarks. I have driven Provo Canyon literally thousands of times in my lifetime. From my childhood, I recall the beauty and excitement of Bridal Veil Falls, with its awe-inspiring aerial tramway and red-liveried tram cars making their round trip to a magical Cliff Lodge destination. My very first rappelling experience was at approximately 1,200 feet out of a Bridal Veil Fall tram car onto a cliff. I've hiked the falls to the old Cliff Lodge multiple times, and in 1982, I was a signature away from purchasing the Bridal Veil Falls tram operation and surrounding property from the previous owners. My family and legal counsel were opposed to my potential purchase of the property, as it was in less than average condition, had nothing of interest at the barren Cliff Lodge to ride the tram for, and made little sense financially. Rowland Clegg, the first owner and builder of the tram, was a visionary. The Bridal Veil Falls aerial tramway, splendidly set against the backdrop of the falls, rivaled any scenic lift or tramway I have experienced or viewed on my multiple visits to the Swiss Alps and surrounding areas. It was sad to learn that the previous owners, also known as the second owners, had purchased it through a notice in the newspaper and subsequent bank sale, albeit at an extremely good price. I ultimately and reluctantly decided against the purchase, but it was not until the devastating 1996 avalanche, which completely destroyed the tram operation at Bridal Veil Falls, that I realized it had been wise to have decided against the purchase of Bridal Veil Falls at that time. In the spring of 2017, I watched a televised news piece focused on Bridal Veil Falls. Commissioner Greg Graves, who I did not know, was featured. And after some self-imposed deliberations, I made contact with his office and met with him to discuss what I believe is the only practical, safe, and viable option to re-beautify and reconstruct a world-class landmark of Utah County. My basic understanding was that the county had purchased the property to assure a proposed hotel would not be constructed, and that the county was going to pay for the demolition of the boarded-up lower tram building and the upper charred and burned cliff terminal. I do not understand why the county did not require the previous owners to clean up the unsafe, avalanched, and subsequently fire-ravaged structures that sat in disrepair for the better part of 20 years. Anything the county would have paid to the previous owners would have been too much in this taxpayer's opinion. The previous owners should have paid the county to take it over and clean it up. I shared with Commissioner Graves that through my decades of enjoying, contemplating, and dreaming of Bridal Veil Falls, including research into tram operations in Europe, I had come to the conclusion that the mindful, practical, and emotional solution to the renewal of this major Utah tourist attraction, with its inherent excitement and beauty, would be to reconstruct a modern Bridal Veil Falls tramway, tastefully coinciding and coexisting with the simple and view-oriented Bridal Veil Park, with the lower terminal to be constructed on a corner of the UDOT-owned upper parking lot to abate future avalanche concerns and maintain the natural beauty at the base of the falls. Commissioner Graves seemed to embrace this well-conceived idea. He shared that he had been waiting for something like this to be proposed for 2 years. He readily connected me with Richard Nielsen, the Utah County Public Works Director and Utah County Engineer. Of course, Commissioner Graves also voiced to me that any decision regarding Bridal Veil Falls would be ultimately decided by the majority vote of the Utah County Commissioners. In good faith and in the optimism of starting construction in 2018 of the newly conceived, reconstructed, and soon-to-be internationally celebrated Bridal Veil Falls aerial tramway, I commissioned the Curtis Minor architectural firm to start due diligence on the feasibility of a modern tramway, while the county would be conducting a public opinion survey. Much later, I was pleased to learn that one of the ideas the public suggested was a new aerial tram. Our due diligence started in May of 2017 and included, through coordination with Richard Nielsen, visiting on-site with the demolition crew and our structural engineer to see if any of the existing foundation or steel could be used in a rebuild, which it was determined it could not. A geotechnical and geological firm was hired to study the strata and geological features of the upper tram location to determine the suitability and feasibility of new construction of the upper terminal. The preliminary reports we received suggested we could move forward with the exploration of the project. We then contracted a survey company to conduct a comprehensive boundary and topography survey in conjunction with a detailed aerial survey. This research was all completed in the latter part of the summer of 2017. Additionally, consultation with a professional Swiss-based tram design team took place, so we could be ready to start the design phase immediately on anticipated county approval. Then we waited and waited. My understanding was that the public opinion survey was slow in being conducted. Then an RFI, request for information, was also delayed because of more pressing concerns in the county. My understanding was that the RFI didn't result in much response locally or nationally. In the meantime, I again met with Commissioner Graves and Richard Nielsen. Commissioner Graves suggested I meet individually with Commissioner Lee and Ivy. They also suggested that we submit a letter form proposal, which I instructed my attorney to prepare, and then submit on July 10th of 2018. We have heard absolutely nothing from the county in regards to this officially submitted proposal. My architect set up meetings with the Commissioners Lee and Ivy respectively, and we met with them earlier this year. Commissioner Lee seemed very interested in my well-thought-out proposal, and he said he would plan to meet with another department in the county within a couple of weeks. I've wrestled with a decision as to whether to relate the experience my architect and I endured through our meeting with Commissioner Ivy. It was not a professional or pleasant meeting. In fact, it was unlike any meeting I've ever experienced. Commissioner Ivy repeatedly and disrespectfully dozed off during our meeting. I can assure him if he had come to my office asking to meet with me, I would not have treated him with the same lack of regard. Around the 1st of July of this year, we were informed of yet another county procedure. I had started this process over a year before, and we had done everything we've been asked to do, and now the county was requiring an RFP, a request for proposal. Why hadn't the county simply required an RFP in the first place? We had waited patiently for a public opinion survey, a request for information, filed a letter of form proposal that I understood the county was required to act on but hadn't, and now and now a request for proposal. So, to make sure we cover that as well, we submitted an RFP. I understand the county has received 2 proposals for Bridalveil Falls under the RFP, ours and a proposal from the previous owners. With all due respect, the last owners had nearly 20 years to do something with Bridalveil and did nothing other than leave a disaster zone in place for the county's thousands and thousands of locals and visitors to tolerate, and then sold the remains to the county at a substantial price. The delays the county has taken this last year and a half suggest to me that some within the county may not like my proposal. However, it is the only proposal that makes any compelling sense. There may be some in the county who think the tram should be available to the public at all times. I would be surprised if the county wanted to be in the tram business, with little chance of recouping what would be a substantial investment. I had observed through the years that not many people actually rode the tram, which may have contributed to its early bank sale. However, countless visitors had stopped to look in amazement and wonderment at the falls and uniqueness of the aerial tramway. There may be some who think a new tramway should not be constructed. That would be congruent to gazing at the stars without occasionally looking at them through an enriched human-built telescope. The Bridalveil tram, highlighting and drawing due attention to the extraordinary falls, was known far and wide as one of the prime destinations to visitors of our county. The tramway I would construct will cost the county taxpayers nothing, and will recreate this landmark in an enhanced way that will again stir the imaginations of young and old, both near and far. In addition, the upper tram structure will serve peacefully and ideally as a sanctuary for people locally, nationally, and around the globe suffering and desiring to recover in privacy from opioids and other chemical addictions through the proven expertise of Cirque Lodge. The substantial dollars I'm willing to pay the county for the limited property I would need to acquire will go a long way towards the limited landscaping that would need to be completed on the park. All funds earned from the tram on days when it would be open to the public will go to the county towards ongoing maintenance and beautification of the Bridalveil Falls Park. I may never recoup the cost of rebuilding the tram, but it would be well worth my investment in our county to reestablish an incredible landmark that positively influenced me and many others in our youth and later years. I'm almost finished. If you would like me to work with the county to coordinate any detail improvements to my proposal, I would be happy to comply. If you are looking for a proposal and solution to make Bridalveil more magnificent than ever, you have found it. If you're looking for more, then I believe you are looking beyond the mark for something that cannot be sustained in light of the past business models and unfortunate natural disaster. Anything more than what I have proposed could be destroyed in a winter's moment in any given year by an avalanche in waiting. Does the county want to potentially end up with what it has now? My understanding is that the 1996 avalanche, which took out the original tram, thankfully only dispersed approximately 1/3 of the snow that could have possibly been released. I respectfully submit that I believe I have given more thoughtful consideration as to what would make Bridalveil Falls viable and spectacular again than anyone else in the county or otherwise. The demolition work the county has done has unintentionally left a scar on our beautiful mountain where the Cliff Lodge was located. My solution would mend that scar with an architectural tramway imagined to a superior level beyond its brilliant original vision, proving along the way that a devastating avalanche may injure our great county temporarily, but that we can and will rebuild a world-renowned landmark stronger and more magnificently meaningful than before, while affirming that the private and government sectors can work together to recreate a masterpiece of man in harmony with the beauty of nature. Thank you. Any questions for me?
Well, I appreciate your, Commissioner Ivey. I appreciate your comments. I'm sorry that I have a different recollection of our meeting because I do recall the details of your proposal. I have read through your proposal, and I think we just fundamentally have some disagreements, but I certainly wouldn't publicly insult you because I fundamentally disagree with what the icon of Bridalveil Falls is. I believe the icon of Bridalveil Falls is Falls, not the tramway that used to exist there. And so I think that, yeah, I do have a different take or perspective on it. I was happy to hear your proposal, to review it, to look at it, and to see what you had to offer. And I'm sorry that you came away from that meeting with a different feeling than what I did, but sometimes it's okay to have different visions. I happen to like to sit and look at the stars in the sky without a telescope. In fact, I don't own a telescope. I just like to look at things through my natural eye. And some people like to look at through a telescope, and it enhances them. And I have no problem with people that enjoy that part of it. Just like I don't fundamentally object to people that like trams and riding them. That's simply something that I have a different perspective on. And so I would just think it's okay to enjoy or view things differently without necessarily publicly insulting each other because we see things differently.
I leave it as I said.
So, this is partly why I'm offended on this RFP and the order. Commissioner Lee and I came into office literally being contacted days before we were sworn into office on the purchase of Bridalveil Falls to make us aware, and there were some concerns from other individuals as we both came in. Knowing what we went through with the previous owner, I'm just honestly offended that they'd even be considered number one. These are my own personal opinions and feelings, not shared by any other person than myself. This is going to be probably one of the meaner things I've ever said, but there is not one person at Public Works that I don't admire, that I appreciate and like. I do feel that Public Works has let the county down and is not functioning the way I would like to see them do. And again, this is just my own opinion. It is not an indictment on any person because I do, and they do a lot. But in this one process, it's things like this that give me great pause, quite honestly. What Mr. Losey read was accurate. I've been working on this and taking it to Commissioner Lee and working back and forth with this the best way we could, and Commissioner Ivey as well. And I know we've all been frustrated in the fact that this hasn't gone forward. It seems like sometimes in the county, and then again, this is where my opinion comes in, if people in the county don't agree with the commission's direction, it appears to me sometimes we wait out commissioners, or we don't do things, or we just kind of wait and try and circumvent, and this is not just unique to Public Works, that we go around and try and find the other two commissioners. That's my frustration. I do believe it's in the public's best interest. You know, when you have very little input from a survey, and some of those surveys recommend the tram, and again, the point I was going to make on the tram, whether it's 6 days, whether it's 1, whether it's 100, it doesn't matter. There's an event called the Wave down south that I believe is a national park. I don't remember if it's on national ground, whatever, that they draw for. It's not open to the public, so we already do things like that. There are limited type of things, so from that standpoint, that's fine. I do think that we should reject the RFP, but I do think that the county should surplus and look at selling some of those things that could create revenue, or go forward with something. But a decision has to be made, because what we spent on this and the fact that nothing's going on is quite maddening to me, truthfully. It has been identified in our budget every year for 3 years using TRCC grant money for Bride of Elk Falls. It's been a placeholder. And that's as far as it's gone, in my opinion. So anyway, I'm ready to move forward, and that's all for me.
Any other comments? Okay, a motion to be in order.
I will move then that we receive the recommendations from the committee and reject all proposals as stated in number 6.
I'll second that motion.
We got a motion and a second to reject all recommendations that were submitted to us from the recommending committee as stated in number 6. All in favor of that motion, say aye.
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 That passes 3-0.
I'd like to make just one more comment. Mr. Losey, the legal proposal you made to the county was held off because of the RFP process. I think it would be wholly appropriate for you to reach out to the attorneys and find out the status and ask for an opinion at this time, whatever that would go, wherever that would need to go. Okay? That is why we couldn't answer, is the RFP. So, just so you're aware.
Okay, let's move on to number 7. Number 7 is to adopt an ordinance amending chapter 12. And Anthony, I've got, and Ben, I've got one question on there before we get into this. Why did this not go back to the Planning Commission first?
So I believe there was a misunderstanding. When you asked whether anything had changed, this is the version that was approved by the Weed Control Board. So this is a weed control nuisance ordinance amendment. It was approved by the Weed Control Board. It mirrors state code. Our former...
So we go to the Weed Control Board, but not the Planning Commission when it comes to this.
Correct.
Okay, I was looking for some sort of a recommendation there, and I didn't see it from the... Because we're dealing with an ordinance.
Right.
That seems...
It wasn't it's not a land use ordinance, it's a nuisance ordinance. Our current code was out of sync with state code, so we amended that to be in sync with state code.
Yeah, you'll have to point out, because as I was looking at the red line version of this and seeing the notes off to the side, the only thing that I saw was formatting. And, you know, putting a period here or changing it to Times New Roman. I mean, those are the only things that I really saw, so
yeah,
you'll have to point out where the change is.
The change is the red line. That's all additions. There was no.
You're gonna have to point out a little better than that for red line for me, because that doesn't necessarily work since I'm colorblind.
On page 2, 12-1-4.
Page 2.
It originally said, whenever a nuisance is found to exist within Utah County, we added, except as specified in Utah County Code 12-1-9 and 10.
12-1-2?
Sorry, 12-1-4.
I was going to say 4 has
page
red
2.
Line. Took out
so page 2.
As it pertains to noxious weeds is what you added.
Wait, okay, am I?
Right?
So page 2, 12-1-4, notice to abate.
That's the only
I
thing
know.
they've added.
What's?
The red
You
line.
have the whole thing?
No, except just
Where's
that
the
red line. Just that very top line.
I'm not seeing it. The only thing I saw was that W.
No, it's just,
Really dark red would be very helpful for me. Because I seriously, I look at that and everyone says, oh, it's right there. I cannot see it.
PC blue.
I can't see the blue,
Okay.
so, okay.
so yeah, it's just that first sentence, that whole first sentence.
Okay,
And then on page 3, 12-1-9,
You added all the
12-1-10,
noxious
those are,
weeds.
yeah, and 12-1-11, those are all the additions that mirror state code. Currently, if somebody was to be cited for a nuisance under county code, it would be at odds with state code, and there could be potential liability for the county or just potential confusion
So
in
are we not
dismissal.
grandfathered in with our old law?
Our old county
Our
code?
You say they'd be at odds,
Right.
but generally, county ordinances, the new state, well, not generally, there's a lot of state ordinances that if the county already has an ordinance or policy on it, that we're grandfathered in, and so we don't necessarily have to. Is this not one of those?
This is not one of those. This has specific processes
Okay.
and procedures for weed controlled nuisance. Our county code had different processes, and as such, the state code trumps.
Okay. And so you guys have reviewed, and 12-1, 9, 10, and 11 are the additions that help, basically are outlined by state statute on the appeals and how to comply with that law.
That is correct.
Okay, because that's literally the only changes in here is that
Right.
section. Now, however,
On page 6, if you go to page 6,
okay,
there are some county
you go there.
ordinance.
So you're saying on 12-1-11, that there is an appeal process that will come before the legislative body?
That's correct. That's as per state statute.
so grandma and noxious weed hearings now.
And the judicial review, what's that? On that 12-1-11? Is that just meaning that we will,
What it means is if it goes to this board first, and if they disagree, then they can apply to the district court for the next level review,
okay,
which is typical.
So the non-noxious weeds is the only part I actually had an issue with.
On page 6?
Yes.
Yeah.
So, or like, and honestly, we have so many of these that obviously you can't, I've never read them all. If I had a different background, maybe I would be aware of some of these things. But non-noxious weeds shall be cut and cleared from all real property.
Yes.
And 12 inches. There's like no study that's gone into that. This is just an arbitrary number for somebody who wants to say, okay, we need to clean it up. Who's going to go patrol it? Who's going to, because we're already way behind and understaffed.
Right. This has been the height requirements for non-noxious weeds. This has been the county ordinance for,
I know, but
for 40
my
plus years.
problem is with this is literally if, let's say they're in a CE1 zone and have a 50-acre property with a house. We're now saying you've got to go out and mow those weeds on the face of the mountain down to 12 inches.
So enforcement of this is not the discretion of community development, but community development looks at these when there's other land use violations. In addition to violations of weeds 3 feet high, they will.
Okay. So here's what I hear, right? Me being general public. Oh, so in other words, when community development comes in, this is another thing to tack on and just nail my butt to.
Yeah, and that's what it's been for decades.
Yeah, so why instead of non-noxious weeds, don't we just strike this out? Because
And get rid of it so people can grow their weeds as high as they want.
we don't enforce it anyway. We use it as a, gotcha, here's one of 45 things. So, and again, if we're gonna have a weed control is important, right? But let's do the science behind it, right? Weed control is important because of our water. 12 inches on most of these weeds is still draining all the water that would ever go by them. So
I don't think it's just water, it's also aesthetic. When you get 3 foot tall weeds, it doesn't look good.
okay, in a CE1 zone on the cliff, on the face of a mountain that Because again, I'm using what community development says to me.
Sure.
Okay? They tell me, Commissioner, you can't do that because all of a sudden if you do that in this zone, it affects every other zone.
We'd be open for suggestions from community development, from the commission. We did not, when we amended this ordinance, it was looking at the state noxious weed control ordinance and applying it to the county ordinance.
My problem is community development is not an area where we have discretion. And here's what I say. The way the way you said that to me is a law enforcement argument, right? They have ordinances or they have laws that they have the discretion of enforcing. They pull you over for speeding and have a seatbelt and a tail light, right? They have that discretion that has been given to them because of their practice to do that. Community development shouldn't have any discretion. When we're talking community development, we are talking ordinances that are for the public safety. Why would we ever skip those safety and water, like all those things? Why? How do we have discretion? You either do or you don't. And if it doesn't make sense to have those, then let's get rid of them.
Mr. Commission, Mr. Graves, I think what you might want to consider is hearing from the fire marshal. When you have weeds up 3 feet tall, you are providing combustible materials, essentially, that can fuel a fire. And it might be good to have.
Well, same with 12 inches. We need to
Sure.
do some thinning and
Sure.
treating. I agreed.
That's part of why this is.
But that's what I'm saying. Let's apply the science and let's do it rather than just having a gotcha. Let's put some practical for today's type of things. That's where I'm getting at.
Well, I find, I had a friend, he's passed away now, who ran into some weeds problem in the city. And to show the concern about that whole and the, just kind of the soft protest to it, he put dandelions and weeds in pots and was growing them on purpose and putting them out front of his property. And I found that ironic in some cases because maybe he preferred that. I understand where you're going with this to a certain extent because, one, if we put it in place and then we have to enforce it, we had better enforce it all the way across the entire county.
That's right.
If we don't, then it can be used as a club to cause problems. And so those are my concerns when it comes to some of this as well.
Sure.
We're gonna come out there and write you up for everything, and, oh, we got you because we measured the weeds and they were 16 inches.
Yeah.
Instead of 12.
No, it's a good point, and I think my first response is that was outside the scope of what we were looking at doing, and so we'd be happy to look at that. If that needs to change, work with community development, the weed control board, weed control supervisor through Public Works. We're all ears. As far as enforcement of every ordinance in the county code, we would need to hire twice as much staff in environmental health.
No.
County, yes, we
No,
would.
that's not what I'm saying. Hold on, let's back up just a hair. What I'm saying is in your review of them, if you find them something that doesn't need to be enforced because it doesn't make sense for today's day and age, bring those before the commission. Let's remove those because you're right. You can't enforce everything, but that doesn't mean everything needs to be there and be enforced. And that's what I'm saying. Not that if we're going to add it to the code, then we better be enforcing it because it's important. But if it doesn't apply, let's get rid of it. That's what I'm saying.
So historically, how many times has this been applied?
Again, this is the height of the weeds. This was outside of the scope of what we were presenting today. I don't know.
Only when Robert wanted to subdivide.
Well, we do have a weed control supervisor, Jake Johnson, and he routinely is going around along with employees of Public Works. Richard, I don't know, you probably could speak better to me, but I mean, they have a system in place. They're also adapting from, I think.
But I don't want them to have to go out and start measuring weeds because that's the only way to enforce it.
But this isn't just like residential
and if you set your
treatment
height
as
to
well.
mow, I set my mower to cut it 2 inches, right? And if the ordinance is for 2 inches, the very next day it has grown and it's now 2 1/4 inches. So I'm out of compliance. That's my point.
Cut it again.
Yeah.
With Jake's crew and the weeds crew, they are typically looking more at the noxious weeds. And I think this is speaking
That's correct.
Right.
to the non-noxious weeds, if I'm understanding it right. Is that
Correct.
Right,
So
that,
they're
but that's
not
my point
routinely
is,
looking for the
the
height.
non-noxious weeds I'm in support of, but then they changed, and that's why I say now all of a sudden I'm aware of number 12, which had no change. It's an ordinance, truthfully, in 3 years and 10 months, I've never looked at. But that's my point, is we have one for noxious weeds, I get it. There's been a lot of studying that came through doing research, study, and science. It's that new part of, and it's not new, but it's that part of number 12 that I think we should review, because when I hear an attorney say, well, yeah, we use it, and it's one of those things, we go and hold them in compliance, why do I want to put our people in danger? We already get those phone calls. And there'd be nothing more aggravating to a farmer, a homeowner, or anybody to have somebody from the county show up and say, your weeds are 14.5 inches long.
And because of Jake's workload and hit with his crew and the noxious weed side of it, they're typically not getting into
That,
side
and
of it.
that's my other point, so let's remove it. That's all I'm saying. Those are the type of things that I would like to see the attorney's office review. Check with Richard, check with those guys and say, yeah, we're not able to enforce it. If we're not enforcing it, get it off the books. That's all I'm saying.
Thank
Anyway.
you. No, we appreciate that. And just to clarify, the non-noxious weeds were added in this section because noxious weeds
clarify.
already have with these additions, its own set process.
Because it was just saying
So we
weeds
just had to
before.
distinguish
Yes.
non-noxious and noxious weeds.
Yes, and that part I understand. I just would like a review on section 12 there.
And I'm great with some additional reviews, so it sounds like we probably should go ahead and do this one.
We didn't
The
quite hear
planning
that.
commission, is that what you said?
No, I just said I would agree that this probably could look at some additional review, so I would certainly be in favor of continuing.
So if we, could we send this back to the board?
The entire ordinance or just the portion about weeds and height?
Just the section 12? Could we send it back could we send the whole thing back, or could we send it back in portions?
Well,
What
when you
would
say
be-
section 12, is
The-
it 12-2-12?
Dash 2-9?
The one after the new 3 sections, when we changed from
Oh,
weeds
I
to
see.
non-noxious weeds.
Yeah.
Have planning commission review those things, or whoever.
You could adopt 12-1 with the new additions, and you could not approve the non-noxious weeds on page 6.
I'm not offended by changing it to non-noxious weeds. That's not my point, because obviously that's a distinction between.
That's correct.
The question is do we need to send back the whole ordinance for a review, even if we approve it today, for review from the planning commission? Should we not accept it today and have to send it all back, or can we approve it and send just a section back for review? That's what we're asking for, a procedural
Gotcha.
point.
You could approve the entire thing with the direction to look at a specific 12-2 for whatever purposes, whatever the commission wants to do with it.
With them coming back with a
Recommendation.
Yes.
recommendation? And
And
do it,
my preference would be for a full review.
Okay, I agree.
Rather than just to nail these things apart.
So you want to not move on this one today and have them review the whole thing before we accept any of it?
Yeah.
Okay.
That would be my inclination. And rather than nail pieces today, I'd like the whole thing looked at. And here's part of my concern with this. I get that we have to aggressively and actively control non-weed invasive species in the county. Fully supportive of that. One of the questions I have is, well, what happens when it's county property that this is propped up on? Are we applying the same rules to government agency as we're expecting the private citizenry to adhere to? So those are always kind of some questions I have when we look at these particular types of ordinances, and why I want a full review on it, really look at enforceability and how practical is this and what's the overall benefit.
and I think a key word in there is practical. A reasonable expectation of what we should be doing. I think there's a good point in there that if the county is out of compliance with it as well, and we find ourselves out of compliance with it, how in the world can we put it in here and say we're going to enforce it or have the potential of threat of enforcing it on others? And what that means, I think that's a good review.
Yeah. So the question is, I guess then Robert or you two, do we strike this and send it back? Do we make a motion to send it back? What's procedurally the right way? Because I agree. It's,
Procedurally, right now, it's on to adopt the
so
amended ordinance.
you want us to
so-
strike it so you could put it back on planning commission? If we
Well,
stroke,
it's with the
if I
weed control board,
if I move a motion to strike, you would send it back to the weed control board for review.
if you gave us that direction.
then I'm gonna, are we done with discussion?
I think,
I will then.
any other comments on it?
Let me suggest that you actually do send it back, because
Yeah.
I think the weed control board's gonna wanna know what you want.
Yeah.
And so if you send it back by motion with some direction, then I think they can have that discussion with them.
Well,
Okay.
I would hope that they would listen to this dialogue too. as
Then
part
I'll
of
make
it.
the motion this way, and let's see. I'll move then to strike number 7 from the agenda with a recommendation to review, send this back to the Weed Control Review Board for reviewing this ordinance in its entirety, specifically addressing that which the county doesn't enforce, should enforce, of a practical nature.
Pertaining to weeds, this is a broader ordinance than just
Yes,
weeds.
this well,
There's
section
nuisance
12.
Okay.
Section 12 of the nuisance.
Pertaining to weeds.
Yes. Well, yes.
Section 12 goes beyond just weeds, it's a nuisance
Relating to
chapter.
nuisances, as stated in number 7.
Well, if you get beyond weeds, it would need to go to the planning commission, I would believe, or
No,
who
no,
would
no.
it go to, Rob,
Again.
for nuisance? Other than weeds,
This is not a planning commission issue.
who would it be?
It would be this board.
Weed
Okay.
control.
Okay.
Well, so we should look at the whole thing, because they probably dovetail here and there, and you have words that are in both that need to be
Yeah, I
looked
want them to
at.
review it. It's what
Review
they're
the
there
whole
for.
thing.
Well, the weed control board is there for weeds. Other nuisances like stacked tires, that's
They'll only
beyond weed
address and
control
review
board.
that which they have scope for.
Which is this.
Well,
Okay.
he only included portion of this section.
Okay, let me try this again. I move to strike, and I want the weed review board to review this, everything that pertains to them, and give us a practical decision on how they'd like us to proceed. Is that cleaner?
And they can listen to this. Is there a second on that?
I will second.
Okay, I got a motion and a second to strike agenda item number 7. All in favor, say aye.
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 That passes 3-0. I didn't think that was going to bring up that much.
I didn't either.
I thought it was a formatting thing. All right, that's what happens when you're colorblind. I've always argued with my kids that I should get one of those handicap parking stickers so I can, because, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, what if it's red? You wouldn't know.
Yeah,
to
what if
park
it's
there.
red? I wouldn't see it.
So do you see stop signs? No.
If stop signs are next to trees that are green on the corners, those are problematic. All right. Okay, now we're on to number 10. Okay, this one, I do not have a problem with, personally, with the $1 million that they have when it comes to their insurance. The problem that I have in looking at the permit itself, and I realize that this is after November 6th, but there are still political activities going on, and it says brief descriptions. It says that they're going to be filming a conversation between 2 military officers and a government employee discussing political events. So I'm not sure exactly what that means, and because it's going to be in a facility in which we will be going through a process, a political process, and with our voting, that gave me pause. I'm not concerned about the $1 million thing.
I hadn't thought about that.
So so that's the reason
Well-
why I stopped.
I'm actually concerned with the $1 million from this standpoint. We have stopped so many things. I think we need to adopt an ordinance where we allow this $1 million type contingency so that Richard doesn't have to keep coming back and it meets a certain criteria because,
Well, I think we have that, and that's this.
well, but
We can give
the
an
commission has never not held to the governmental standard. And it doesn't make sense. We stopped a fundraiser for and Buffton, I'm gonna say this the wrong way, 1033, right? The 1033 Foundation, we stopped a fundraiser because we held them to a $2.5 million liability rather than $1 million liability. Those type of things. Again, if we create an ordinance so that we gave him an outline that said this, and this is appropriate so that you don't have to come
What
back.
the circumstances were
I don't either.
behind that one that you're referring to. This one here is
Dave told us that it didn't meet
one
our
or-
standards.
a 1 or 2 day event. There's like 30 people possibly involved. I know there's a fog machine possibly involved with it. I mean, the risk levels of it seem a little less than what, I don't know what the other events that we look at, but we have to kind of weigh them back and forth. If you've got hundreds of people and you've got all kinds of stuff, moving parts going on, it might be a different conversation.
Well, he'll say, well, what if they trip on the stairs? That's what the attorneys would say, right?
Yeah.
those type of things. And again, I agree with you. So,
Just try to keep people out of the way of the track also.
yeah.
Commission, just a reminder of why we do this. We do have government immunity at 2.5 and that thereabouts. And if we approve less than 2.5 in the insurance, then we would be covering that gap essentially.
We'll be
So
covering
if
the
something,
1.5.
yeah, if something happened that exceeded $1 million, or there's liability imposed that exceeded $1 million, we would be on the hook for that, so.
So, okay, so, I mean, that's another conversation, but this conversation with political activities going on in a building in which we have political events happening at that same time,
Yeah.
which we've said that we're not, that's the pause that I want to at least start with. If we can't cross that threshold, then the
Then
other
the
one
others
doesn't mean
yeah.
anything.
And I don't know the answer to that, so.
Well, ironically, Ralph Barnes sent us an email this morning reminding us of that.
I didn't see anything, since we're not the ones endorsing the message, I didn't see anything legally wrong with it. In my research, it looked like as long as we're not the ones publicly endorsing it, if our facilities are open, it seemed like more the issue for us was more on the liability standpoint, that if we had any problems reducing the amount and accepting the $1 million, then we would be liable for the difference. But for us allowing them to be in there, as long as we weren't taking like a position and endorsing them or supporting it.
No, we don't, that's not how the political activity reads. County can't facilitate or allow any political activity. Scott?
Yes, and I think the chief concern with this is that this building where this will be happening, we use that for a significant part of our mail operation for vote by mail. And as long as that is going on, we can't really have any overt political activity like that going on down in the lobby. I don't know what the nature is of what they're going to do, but if it is advocating for something, one way or the other, I think it would be considered a political activity and would probably be inappropriate at that time.
And even if we knew what they were doing, and then we said yes, we're okay with it, then we're taking a position for it, which anyway, that was the only concern that I had with it. I don't know if we can get past that threshold.
I think we'd be better off to deny it based on that, in my opinion.
Yeah, and just let them find another building.
Right.
Not that we care that they do it.
Right.
Find somewhere that doesn't charge them $2.5 million.
And I would agree with those sentiments.
Okay, then I will move then that we deny the petition as stated in number 10.
Second,
I got a motion and a second to deny the petition as stated in number 10. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Did you say aye, Commissioner Ivey?
yes, aye.
Okay, that passes 3-0. Okay, the last one on our agenda is item number 13 is to adopt a resolution approving and authorize the execution of interlocal cooperation agreement with the Transit District, formerly known as UTA. And we've had quite a bit of conversation on this. I just wanted to start off first thanking my fellow commissioners. I know that I took quite a substantial lead in this one in the way of organizing and working with UTA and some of their representatives with that and trying to get that wording in place. And this should be for us a certain monumental accomplishment that we are starting to pull back when it comes to local control. And I think that's significant for us to note that today, that this is happening. But I also want to throw out with this interlocal agreement that it is not the finish line that has been crossed with it, because if you look at the interlocal agreement, even in the interlocal agreement, it refers to our service level agreement as part of this interlocal agreement. And so even though we have this in place, we can't say done deal. Until we have that service level agreement, this has tendencies of being only partially completed. We're not there yet. Along with this does not take effect until or until a fourth quarter cent sales tax has been addressed. And so those two components in there don't get us past the finish line. We can start working on that service level agreement, and if we do them kind of out of order, we're gonna find ourselves at a disadvantage on a leverage position, in my opinion. So that's what I wanted to say when it came to this.
Yeah, and I agree. I'm very excited with this because I don't believe in surprises and ambushing my fellow commissioners at commission meeting. I have actually asked for, now that this is completed and had reviewed this, we did see a copy of this, seems like about 10 days ago or somewhere, for them to prepare for the commission to discuss again the implementation of the fourth quarter. Commissioner Lee reminded me of some big potential meeting hurdles on the 23rd, most importantly our tentative budget. So the discussion, I plan on putting that on the commission agenda for October 30th for discussion. Again, I will be putting on that for an implementation of the fourth quarter tax, and would hope that the public would come and be heard. And I let Andrew at MAG know that I would like him and everybody else to, again, speak out just as a discussion. Now that this is an official part, I believe it's a step, like you say, to go and potentially, maybe hopefully hurry and get that service level agreement that you've been working on for a while. So.
And I'll just mention that I think I don't mind having the conversation, but I think the implementation, or I would prefer it going to the ballot, which I've stated over and over.
Sure.
Is that the process should be that we have the service level agreement in place before we even consider any of those future steps, because if we don't, then we lose a certain amount of.
Sure. Well, and like I say, I just wanted to point out that I have asked, and it will be on the October 30th agenda, just so all those discussion points can be made, because you're right, it's not as simple as a straight up and down vote. So.
Okay, come on up. You got it.
Agreed. This is a huge step forward, and it's been a lot of good work by both parties, and very exciting to make the move forward like this.
Andrew
Jackson with Mountain Land Association of Governments, and also for the next couple of weeks, UTA trustee. I appreciate the multiple months effort on this interlocal agreement. I wish that it could have gone in place in 2014 prior to the 2015 vote on Proposition 1. I think that would have made a difference in a lot of people's minds on that. But this is moving in a positive direction, I think, for local control and for the residents of the county whose taxpayer dollars it is. A couple things on it. As you stated, Commissioner Lee, this is just the first part. The next is a service level agreement. Additionally, with that service level agreement, well, let me back up a little bit. So prior to July 1st of 2019, 100% of any funds that are generated out of this fourth quarter go directly to the county. So the service level agreement would not go into place until after July 1st of 2019, and then additionally until after the BRT obligations are met, which would take up about 100% of this revenue, about $9 million a year, with the bonding, O&M, and then also the repayment of any funds that have previously been paid out, such as the $2.8 million in 2014 and the additional funding in 2016, 2017, 2018, and 2019.
But
after that's done, go ahead. Sure.
But in my mind, the service level agreement only doesn't apply to just this. It would apply to all of the quarter cent sales taxes that are.
Yes, with SB 136, there's the Planning Advisory Committee that would have 2 people on it from Utah County, and part of that is that part of the work that they do will be establishing that service level agreement. On the fourth quarter cent portion of it, there wouldn't be any impact from a service level agreement until those previous obligations have been paid, because that's how that interlocal agreement is stated. Additionally, the interlocal agreement would assume that there would be a countywide implementation, And then at July 1st of 2020, the state law allows it to go city by city. So
Right.
After that point,
Yeah,
unless
if it's
the
not
cities,
enacted by 2020, this thing's mute.
yeah, unless the cities
Moot,
have their own
not
agreements or something like that. Yeah, so just want to make clear that this is the first step, but there is also things that need to happen, and that clock is ticking because the interlocal agreement would only be, unless the cities don't enact by July 1st of 2020, and then the county enacts it countywide.
So, to me, it's incumbent upon UTA or Transit District, however we're referring to them as of this minute, to get that service level agreement, because even though I have been a supporter of implementation, I've never been a supporter of implementation without a service level agreement.
Oh, we all agree on that.
And even though I'm proposing it on October 30th for a discussion, it is, I'm only advocating for it if and when there's a service level agreement in place, like Commissioner Lee says, that does actually account for all, even if it has to be compartmentalized from first quarter, second quarter, whatever, right? And then the only other thing I'd like to add to your comments is if we're going back and wishing for 2015, I wish the whole UTA Transit District was taken out. It was all local roads, because then it really would have passed, I believe.
Oh, yeah, definitely. And I think we see that now with some of the internal polling that we've done, that if it is roads, then it would pass pretty good. And I think that's kind of what we're trying to do with this, at least.
I agree.
Up for the next several years.
Right.
And quite honestly,
that it
I
goes
think
to
UTA
roads.
has recognized that, and that's why they've become a much better partner, I think, from everybody's perspective.
Yeah. See, there was one other point I was going to try and make on this, and I can't remember, so it must have been a lie.
Then my plan worked.
Oh, yeah, I know what it was. So it was important to start the discussion about the fourth quarter, just realizing that by 59/12/2208, you have to give 90-day notice to the state tax commission
Right.
before you implement it, and then they can only implement it on the first day
Right.
of
If
the
if
next
somehow,
quarter.
which I don't foresee this even happening, on October 30th it passed, there wouldn't be a collection of that till February.
Right,
At the earliest.
March, January, February, March, April.
April,
probably,
yeah, that's what I say, it's a
Yeah,
while.
so just so everybody realizes that.
But that's why-
we start that discussion, and whenever you want that to actually go into effect and start receiving those revenues from those funds, you need to realize that there's a 90-day and then the first calendar quarter after.
Well,
that 90-day
and
period.
part of the conversation I'm really trying to facilitate is putting everybody on the record from every aspect of how and why that money's needed, where it's going for, so that there could be some accountability. Because I think that's what's been missing in our tax law, is that we pass these and we say, we need this, we need this, we need this, rather than saying what is done. The one model I've always thought was the best model I've ever seen for proposing for a tax increase was Provo School District's bond a couple years ago, when they went through and said, this school has this problem, it was built in this year, and here's why and what we would do with it. Now, I'm not advocating that, for a tax, but what I'm saying is,
You have
I
to be
really
specific.
appreciated how they detailed everything, so there's an accountability if they wouldn't have lived up to that.
Versus,
Yeah.
let us tax you and just trust us that we'll do the best.
Trust us,
with it.
or
Yeah.
Orm's gonna get this, or Provo's gonna get this, and, oh, well, Elk Ridge, forget about it. Or, and that's never happened inside the MAG group, but
Right, yeah, I
I think the
understand the point.
public demands a
I
little
think that's a
better.
great point.
So.
Mhm. Thank you. And then I don't have anything else unless you have questions.
No.
Nope.
This did pass the UTA Board of Trustees, September 27th, I believe it was.
Did even Brett vote for it, or was it?
It was unanimous.
It was unanimous, so.
Buddy Brett. I'll move then that we adopt the resolution as stated in number 13.
I'll second.
I got a motion and a second to adopt the resolution as stated number 13. All in favor, say aye.
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 That passes 3-0. Okay, we don't have any for 14 and 15, correct?
I'm not
We
aware.
do. We'll need all four, Bill.
All four? Okay.
Yeah, Richard had sent an email that he needed 14 to 15.
Okay.
Well, here we go. I'll move then that we approve and set a date, time, and location for a closed meeting for a strategy session to discuss the purchase, exchange, or lease of real property, water rights, or water shares for today's date at this location following completion of regular agenda items.
I got a motion and a second to approve and set a date, time, and location as stated number 14 on our regular agenda. All in favor say aye.
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 That passes 3-0.
I'll move that we approve and set a date, time, and location for a closed meeting for a strategy session to discuss the sale of real property, water rights, or water shares previously publicly noticed for sale for today's date at this location following the completion of the regular agenda.
Second.
Got a motion and a second to approve and set a date, time, and location as stated number 15 on our regular agenda. All in favor say aye.
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 That passes 3-0.
I'll move that we approve and set a date, time, and location for a closed meeting to discuss the character, professional competence, or physical or mental health of an individual or individuals for today's date at this location following completion of regular agenda items.
Second.
I got a motion and a second to approve and set a date, time, and location for a closed meeting as stated number 16 on our regular agenda. All in favor say aye.
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 That passes 3-0.
I'll move that we approve and set a date, time, and location for a closed meeting for the strategy session to discuss pending or reasonably imminent litigation for today's date at this location following the completion of regular agenda items.
Second.
And a motion and a second to approve and set a date, time, and location as stated number 17 on our regular agenda. All in favor say aye.
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 That passes 3-0. We do not have any work session items. Are there any general public comments? Seeing none, we'll move into our closed meetings. Thank you.